Good morning. Welcome to the Daily Signal, in which I roll out of bed, grab a cup of tea, pull up the Heritage Foundation's horrible daily newsletter, and respond to the article that most horrifies or amuses me before I eat my breakfast. Alright, let's get to it. So today's spread is not as impressive as yesterday's. We've got what impact would a gas tax holiday have? Not much, in which the Heritage Foundation comes out against reducing taxes, a surprising move. We've got Biden administration to force schools to adopt radical gender policies, and I'm beginning to realize already I'm going to have a problem here because Heritage Foundation apparently dedicates at least half of their newsletter every morning to railing against trans people, and as dumb as that is, I can't be just disputing the same tired facts over and over again every day. So we're going to have to just let this one go. I'll see my video yesterday if you want to hear about why this is dumb. On 6th anniversary of Brexit, Britain yet to seize all of freedom's opportunities. Great picture, and I feel like this would be a really fun article if I knew more about Brexit. I will learn more about Brexit. This project is going to make me, inspire me to learn more things. For today, though, we're going to skip it. How Operation Warp Speed got vaccines out in less than 1 year. It's interesting to see Heritage Foundation take this stance. Because, the whole anti-vax movement is insurgent. Good for you, Heritage Foundation, for liking a vaccine. We've got on the eve of Roe versus Wade reversal, poll shows Americans want to protect unborn. We've got, as Title IX turns 50, Biden seeks to undo protections for women yet again. We are worried about the existence of trans people. And in case you missed it, a look at who's on Biden's Parents' Council. Once again, is going to be some stuff about trans people, probably CRT. So after reviewing all these, I have decided we're going to go with the Roe v. Wade poll, because my understanding is that in no way do most Americans support anti-abortion laws. So I'm curious about the methodology that they've used on this poll. So let's get started. On eve of Roe v. Wade reversal, poll shows Americans want to protect the unborn, and we have a beautiful picture of a black woman holding a black baby. And I point out the race here because the Heritage Foundation and other conservative groups like them have decided to use what they consider woke language to talk about abortion. They like to point to the very real legacy of some of the Planned Parenthood founders of believing in some eugenicsy shit. That's not good. It also doesn't follow that the right to decide what to do with your own body is eugenics. In America, race and class are inextricably linked. And when you see a pattern, you always have to ask yourself, is this race discrimination? Is it class discrimination, or both? That's the meaning of intersectionality, like the real one, not the Twitter one, where essentially you have to consider all of the factors before you sound off about what's going on with a thing. So in this case, you have to ask, is there a systemic bias towards giving black people abortions and preventing white people from getting abortions? I've seen no evidence of this, but it does stand to reason that because poor people often have less access to robust forms of birth control, like the pill, Plan B, stuff like this, then there's going to be more unwanted pregnancies, which is going to lead to more abortions. So that's what's going on there. Stories of resilience and hope emerge even in the darkest times. In the 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade, can we look at this motherfucker? Can we just stare into the abyss of this man's picture? I don't think this guy gets to decide anything. In its 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court created and imposed a policy for killing babies in the womb, one of the most extreme in the world, which the American people never chose for themselves. All right, let's address this early. Let's just get it out of the way real quick. The question is whether abortion is murder. That is the real question, because murder is bad. And if abortion is in fact killing babies in the womb, then abortion is bad. Luckily, though, that's not at all what's happening. First of all, abortions are not aborting a person. They are aborting something that might become a person. It's possible that given enough time, that thing would develop into a person, but it isn't a person yet. So the idea that life begins at conception, to me, has always seemed like such a weird way to put it. Like, yeah, it's alive. A lot of things are alive. The chicken that I ate last night was once alive. So the idea that, like, we never take a life is bullshit on the surface of it. Is it a human life? Again, no, it's a collection of cells that could become a human, which is different. And then, of course, there's the other argument, which is that in the same way that I can't legally compel you to give up one of your kidneys to save the life of someone else, even if without that kidney the other person would die, in the same way, you cannot compel a person with a womb to bring a baby to term, even if the baby cannot survive outside of that womb. This gets a little hairy in that advances in medical technology that allow babies to be viable outside of the womb earlier and earlier. And I don't really have time to unpack that right now. I think it's an interesting argument that we can have, but basically at the core of it, and if it requires the womb in order to be alive, then you don't have a right to force the person with that womb to carry the baby to term. Okay, so with that said, a large and consistent majority of Americans, however, have not been duped by 50 years of unrelenting propaganda, misdirection, and spin. The latest polling adds evidence that ought to encourage and guide the pro-life movement should the Supreme Court correct its error and overrule Roe with its expected decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Abortion advocates, aided and abetted by the mainstream media, go to great lengths to keep us from believing our eyes or using our common sense. The issue, they say, is not this particular choice, but choice itself, even though anyone who's ordered from a menu or registered for college classes is pro-choice. Okay, congratulations, you believe in the choice of restaurant, but not in what a person does with their own body. It's not really a compelling argument to me. That's just some goddamn semantics. They're just obscuring the issue, and it's very irritating. Okay. More recently, the propaganda is that killing babies is healthcare. Activists even use phrases such as abortion care as if abortion is a thing to be protected and cared for. It is. A photo of members of the House's pro-choice caucus features signs that say liberate abortion and abortion is essential. I believe you. Even the Supreme Court didn't go that far. The pregnant woman cannot be isolated in her privacy, wrote Justice Harry Blackmun in his majority opinion in Roe, because abortion eliminates, quote, children in the womb, unquote. Interesting wording, yeah. I certainly would have worded it differently. But unlike a lot of conservative doctrine, people on the left or left of center don't necessarily take decisions handed down as dogma or word from on high. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, where there's this kind of like unspoken assumption in a lot of right-wing circles that knowledge is something that is bestowed from above in large sweeping generalities, and that the way you arrive at truth is by examining that text to arrive at a conclusion rather than developing the idea on your own or receiving input from other sources. I mentioned yesterday that this I think comes from the religious bent of a lot of the right. And it's a disconnect because people left of center mostly don't feel that way. We're not going to be picking apart the word of Roe v. Wade like it's gospel. Like, I happen to think that they arrived at the right solution, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with all of their reasoning or that their reasoning was the last word on the subject. It's just a weird, and it's going to keep coming up as I do this project. And I'm just going to point it out every time it does. All right. The 7 justices in the Roe majority, however, apparently forgot that each of them had been just that. Is it any wonder that the pro-abortion propaganda machine today will do anything to deny that, quote, prenatal life, as the High Court put it, exists at all? Again, no one's denying that the fetus is alive. We're denying that it's human. It's different. In Roe v. Wade, for example, the Supreme Court defined viability as the point in which the fetus is potentially able to live outside the mother's womb, albeit with artificial aid. And the proposed Women's Health Protection Act, supposedly a legislative version of Roe, defines viability as the point in a pregnancy at which there is reasonable likelihood of fetal survival outside the uterus with or without artificial support. A fetus is a real separate being, and the mother's womb is where each of us once resided. Fetal survival, in contrast, is an abstract idea, and a uterus is just another organ. he's preaching to the choir here, which is why he's not making any actual arguments. He's just quoting some things and then saying, obviously, they're not true, but this isn't a real argument. Like, I agree that a uterus is just another organ. The idea that it's some kind of special organ over which you have propriety is ridiculous, and I don't accept that. But it's not a real argument, and it's just frustrating that he took up that much time in my day to just be like, here's a quote, and then I don't agree. And everyone knows that it's not true. Like, okay, brah, good job. You win. You don't win. A new poll released this week by Americans United for Life further demonstrates the widening gulf between abortion advocates and the American people. Okay, we're going to wait until the end to click on that link. But, like, let's just all take a minute to pray on the fact that the poll is done by Americans United for Life, an organization that I'm sure has no bias whatsoever. Nearly 90% of those surveyed, for example, said that unborn children become persons before birth, the largest share saying that this occurs at conception. An equal portion say that unborn children have a right to be protected from violence, and 80% say they have a right to be born. Abortion extremists who deny that each of us was alive and human before we were born are practically talking to themselves. That's funny. What he's saying is that because only 20% of Americans, according to this poll, which we'll deconstruct later, believe that we're all alive and human, that we're basically just alone on this island. They are the strong, silent majority or whatever. I don't know if you know this, guys. You should, because you're obsessed with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and you never shut up about your weird version of it that you've decided exists. But, like, rights are not up for a majority debate. So even if this were true, which, we'll get to that in a minute, it doesn't matter at all, because the right to bodily autonomy in no way depends on popular opinion. Sometimes the enforcement of that right depends on popular opinion, because we live in a society, but the right itself, doesn't go away based on a vote. At the same time, the Americans United for Life poll suggests where pro-abortion propaganda has sown some confusion that needs attention. As noted, 80% say that an unborn child has a right to be born, yet only 51% say that an abortion ends the life of a human before birth, and another 28% say that it depends. This actually should be the easiest question to answer. Human reproduction does not produce puppies or guppies, it produces humans. Oh, cute little alliteration there. And how did each of us develop from an embryo to an infant, or from an adolescent to adult, for that matter, if we were not alive? Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, we already did this, we're just gonna do it again quickly. Human reproduction does indeed produce humans, but it's a process. I'm going to use an example that's really popular on Twitter right now. Let's talk about chairs. A chair began as a tree, and then someone cut down the tree and processed the wood and made it into a chair. At what point did that chair start to be a chair? It's the process. A factory that makes chairs does not produce puppies or guppies. It produces chairs, but that doesn't mean it was always a chair. Like, it started out as something else, and then it became a chair. So I don't really understand what I'm supposed to do with this argument. How did each of us develop from an embryo to an infant if we were not alive? Again, no one's arguing that the fetus isn't alive. We're arguing that it isn't a human. The Supreme Court is posed to lift the barrier it constructed in 1973 by overturning Roe v. Wade. The gag rule it imposed on tens of millions of pro-life Americans will be rescinded so that their voice finally can be heard. Oh my God. Guys, I'm so tired. Not just because I woke up like a half hour ago. I'm tired because you insist on abusing the First Amendment in this way. You insist on hurting me by taking the First Amendment, the very first one, and just butchering it in your weird mythos where any law that prevents you from telling other people what to do is a gag order, is a violation of your freedom of speech. This is not a gag rule. This is not gagging anybody. It was a law. It was a Supreme Court decision, and tragically in the past tense, apparently, it was a Supreme Court decision that protected a human right. It did not gag you, as we all know, because none of you have shut the fuck up about this since Roe v. Wade happened. Like, is anyone unaware of the pro-life movement at this point? Is anyone confused about the fact that people oppose abortion? I feel like Nothing could be further from the truth. All I had to do since I was born and could hear is hear about how abortion is bad actually. And the idea that this is a gag rule is just it's dishonest to the point of shame. I'm embarrassed for you. Okay, so this article was stupid. Even if this survey was correct, this article would be bad because human rights aren't up for a vote, and because there's no gag rule, and because he does not in any way take on any of the arguments used by the pro-choice, pro-abortion movement. He does not take any of them on. So this article is already a complete failure. Let's look at the poll. I haven't actually looked at this, so maybe this is going to be really embarrassing for me. Maybe I'm going to click on it, and it's going to turn out that this poll is super legit, and I've been wrong the whole time. AUL YouGov, American supermajority support fetal rights, majority support personhood rights. Okay, so Americans United for Life used YouGov as a way to conduct this survey, is essentially what that means. National survey of 1,000 American adults involving attitudes towards abortion, personhood, legal rights. The survey took place May 6th through 13th, 2022, in the wake of the Supreme Court draft. So life beginning at conception is 31%. That's a minority. But if you combine that... Wait, that's a huge minority. Hold on. Nearly 90% of those surveyed, for example, said that unborn children become persons before birth, the largest share saying that this occurs at conception. Okay, of all of these numbers, the largest share says at conception, but that's a really misleading way to put it, because if the question is at conception versus not at conception, the largest share definitely believes not at conception. Like, if you do the math on this, it's going to be 69%, nice, approximately, give or take, since there are probably going to be some people who are like, I don't know. When a child is capable of surviving outside the womb and at the time of birth, those two things combined are going to be 35%. So actually a larger portion of this survey believed that Roe v. Wade got it right as far as the timing than believe that life begins at conception. Do you support or oppose rights for unborn children? I am fascinated by these questions. Unborn children to inherit wealth. To be protected from violence or assault is large. To be protected against substance abuse is large. And to be born is pretty large. Let's talk real quick about the difference between to be protected from violence and assault and abortion. The right of a pregnancy to be protected from violence and assault goes into the right of the person carrying the child. Like, that person gets to decide what happens to their body, not some random assailant. Violence against that pregnancy from someone else is also violence against that person and against their bodily autonomy. Now, of course, these people are going to argue that, abortion is violence against the child, which again, definition of child, shaky there. But it is in fact a very different thing. Protected against substance abuse is also completely different, because now we are getting into the point where this is a human being. Substance abuse by the mother in the womb is going to lead to consequences for the person that eventually develops. Let's go back to the chair analogy. If I use termite-eaten wood to make a chair, that chair is going to have some issues. Like, that chair is going to need some attention, probably some carpentry to fix it. Same thing there. It's not analogous to abortion in the slightest bit. Okay. Now, 57% of people surveyed strongly support the right of an unborn child to be born. Now, that is, I think, a hell of a way to phrase the question. Do you support state lawmakers having the power to prohibit abortion of an unborn child? Oh boy, weird how they left this part out. So 28% strongly support the right of state lawmakers to prohibit abortion. It's 28%, so that's going to be 62% of people think that they should not have the power, like unlimited blanket power to blanket prohibit all abortions in all circumstances. Yeah, that's going to be the vast majority of Americans who believe that that's bullshit. And it's interesting that that didn't make it into the article. Do you support or oppose the Supreme Court extending legal rights of personhood to unborn children? And again, We got about the same numbers here. It's not quite the same. We got 28 to 31%. So you've got the same people who believe that the state should outlaw abortion, believing that unborn children, fetuses should have personhood rights, and then the vast majority of those surveyed believing that it's more complicated than that, believing in some version of Roe v. Wade, where there is a point in time or circumstances in which abortion is good, actually. So in no way is this like a silent majority. It's actually like a pretty small minority. Do you believe that abortion ends the life of a human before birth? Interesting.
Okay, so I basically struggled for like 10 minutes to articulate the point I was trying to make here because I was very tired. This whole video has been an exercise in me learning that I need to get to bed earlier. I think this is going to be a positive change for me. Anyway, none of that matters. The point is what I was trying to say very hard is that this question conflates two different questions. The first one is it okay to abort something that might become a human? And then the second question is it okay to abort something that has become a human if it's not viable outside of the womb? And we talked about that earlier, right? Like there's a bodily autonomy argument to be made, and that just like I can't be forced to give you a kidney, even if you'll die without one, I also can't be forced to carry a baby to term, even if it would die without me. So that's one way in which you could be like, yeah, abortion ends a human life, and I'm still for it because you can't compel someone else to carry a child to term. Also, you could have people being like, no, abortion doesn't end a human life because a fetus isn't a person. Or you could have someone be like, it depends on whether it ends a human life because it's not a person right up until the point where it is. So this question tells us almost nothing about how people feel. All of the other questions were way better at giving us a gauge on how people feel about stuff, as badly worded as most of them are. Okay, back to it.
Okay, and the last page. Do you identify as pro-life or pro-choice or neither? Pro-life, pro-choice, or neither. So basically, once again, we're seeing numbers incredibly consistent with the results above, where about 30%, give or take, of people surveyed characterize themselves as pro-life. Life begins at conception, etc., etc., etc. And then 39%, which is more, identify as pro-choice. And then 29% would say neither. Like these are people who like probably believe in some abortion but not all of it. So basically you've got 32% of people saying life begins at conception, and about the remaining, 70% or so saying it's complicated. Okay, so that's it. We have deconstructed this absolutely absurd molestation of statistics, and we've done it before breakfast. So that's it. If you want to like, share, subscribe, whatever, you can do that now. It's a free country, sort of. All right, I'm going to go work out now. Everyone have a nice day.